You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
Live from London Film and Comic-Con. It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks, and a very special episode as we return to the halls of Olympia and London Film and Comic-Con as we sit down on the second stage with Fred Sorenson. Fred played Jock Lindsey in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but outside of his adventures with Indiana Jones, he's had an incredible life and career all of his own. So we talked all about that and much, much more. This is myself with Fred Sorenson.
Hello everyone, I'm Mark Newbold from Star Wars Insider Magazine and Fantha Tracks, which is a Star Wars website, but it's also a Lucasfilm website, which is why this is the perfect time to speak to Fred. Welcome to the stage. First things first, how's the event going for you so far?
It's just really been fun to see a lot of people that are just really having a good time and just be a part of that for them. So it's great. Thanks for all being here and thanks for being interested.
And where have you travelled in from? Where's home for you?
My wife and I came from Las Vegas to be here. Her first time in London. So we got a little bit of a tour around before the show started on Friday.
And doing my research, obviously, for this interview, didn't realise quite how long your aviation career stretched back. Can you give us a little bit of info on that? Because looking into it, if it can get into the air, it sounds like you can fly it.
I grew up around it, so my dad was a pilot, and my dad was a Navy pilot when I was born in Panama. He was protecting the Panama Canal with a old World War II bomber, and I've been around airplanes my entire life. And when I was growing up in school, there was always my dad collected old airplanes, and we were always working on some kind of a restoration project.
So it was your dad that showed you the ropes, essentially?
Yep, he did.
And where did you start professionally then, at this point? Where did you start with your career?
So when I was in college, I had my license in high school. When I was in college, I got my instructor's rating, and when I was 19, I went to Japan and started teaching for a U.S. Navy flying club in Japan. So my first job flying was at 19. I went to work for the airlines when I was 23.
Wow. I mean, that seems young to me. Was that considered young then?
Yeah, as an instructor, that was young. So I was the baby of the class when I got hired by the airlines in 1973.
And when you're not having flown anything myself other than as a passenger, is it as much about the theory as it is about the doing? You've got to know obviously you've got to know what you're doing.
So one of the things about flying is that it brings in all of the things that you get to learn when you're in school, like geometry, mathematics, or physics, and everything. And it puts it all together, and then it puts it with just being there. So if you imagine, I was a junior in high school. I had a history teacher, and my history teacher is putting on a lecture, and I'm sitting there looking out the back window of the classroom, and he goes, "Sorenson, get your head in here. You're never going to get anybody to pay you to look out the window all day long." So I send him postcards of all the places I get to look out the window as I fly.
That is literally the one job where you have to look out the window for your whole job.
Yeah.
In terms of the companies you work for and the places you've flown and the routes that you've taken, what's the most, interesting as a pilot to travel, to traverse? Or are they all fairly similar?
So In my career, I flew for Hawaiian Airlines, and I flew inter-island in Hawaii. And then later on in my career at Hawaiian, we flew international, and we flew charters. We went all over the world. We flew during the Gulf War. We flew troops into Saudi Arabia, and we went to Australia, Japan, New Zealand, India, went to Diego Garcia, we went to Bahrain, and we did a lot of flying with just places that you hadn't gone to before, many places you couldn't spell. So the variety was the main thing. And then each point that you got to go to, you just take a little bit out of that experience.
That's fascinating.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
You've become a pilot of some experience by the time Lucasfilm presumably get in touch with you concerning Raiders of the Lost Ark. How did that all come together? How were you the guy? Because you act in the film. Had you got any prior acting experience? How did it all come together?
Well, we had done some aviation work out in Hawaii with Magnum PI TV show, and also with the original Hawaii 5-0.
Yeah. So
I flew, did the flying portions, but never on the actual camera for that. When I was approached to do Raiders of the Lost Ark, I was actually approached to do the flying.
Right.
And also to supply the seaplane. I was teaching in seaplanes while I was flying for the airline. So on the side, I was teaching in seaplanes.
Yeah.
And they called up looking for a seaplane pilot. The seaplane that we had was too modern for what they wanted. So Frank Marshall and Howard Kasanjian came out to Hawaii, and I showed them around and showed them the airplanes that we had available. And Spielberg wanted a open cockpit biplane. So there was only one flying in the country at the time. It was owned by a couple from Oregon. They had owned it for 40 years. Wow. It was beautiful, red and white. And Howard Kasanjian and Frank Marshall and I went out to dinner one night. I was flying them around and showing them different places to film.
Right, yeah.
And so we went out to dinner, and they said, well, are you going to put together this project? And I said, yeah, we can do that. And he goes, well, do you want to play the part of the pilot in the movie? And I went, yeah, what's the name of the movie? And they said, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I went, yeah, what's that about? And they go, Ark of the Covenant, So who's in it? Harrison Ford. Star Wars. Oh, yeah, okay. Who else? Karen Allen. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. I didn't know she wasn't coming.
And when you say you were hired initially to do the piloting stuff, and then it developed from there. Did you know that all of your scenes would be with the lead guy and at the opening of the film? This is the first time, it's really early doors for Indy.
I had no idea what the rest of the movie was about. And at the time that we did the filming, they had already finished all the rest of the movie. And our portion was just to establish the fear of snakes for Indiana. And we had no idea what the rest of the movie was going to be about. In fact, the first time I saw the movie, I went, whoa, it's actually a pretty good movie. I don't think I charged enough for my part.
Did you get the opportunity to go to the premiere or any of that?
So this is kind of a funny story. When the premiere came out in Hawaii, and I was flying for Hawaiian Airlines, I was on a trip. But the vice president of Hawaiian Airlines went to the premiere. And at the time, Hawaiian Airlines wasn't doing real good.
Right.
Our customer service wasn't, and we were late and all the time. So the vice president goes to the movie in Waikiki, and he stands up in the middle of the movie and yells, "That's a Hawaiian Airlines pilot." And some local guy over in the corner stood up and go, "Hey, bro, one looked like Hawaiian Airlines plane, too." So he just sat down and didn't say anything else.
It just strikes me Samuel L. Jackson years later would make a film called Snakes on a Plane.
Had no idea.
You did the first one.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Early days, the film's just come out. It's a massive hit, a huge hit, one of the biggest hits ever. Are people recognising you? Do people come on the plane and, as you do, meet the captain? And did that ever happen?
It's absolutely amazing that little 5-minute part, or less than, part, that people remember that quote and that part, and it winds up in things like Family Guy and, becomes a Lego. And my daughter calls me up and goes, "Dad, you're not going to believe this. You're in Family Guy." I went, "What?" So there's an episode called Jungle Love in Family Guy where Jock goes and rescues the family down in Peru.
I mean,
It's fun stuff.
Anybody else would say, where is this journey taking you around the world? You've already flown around the world yourself, so it's a slightly different experience. But have you had chance to travel and speak to people about your experiences because of being in Raiders?
So I flew for the airlines for 42 years, and I still fly commercially for a charter company out of Las Vegas, and we go to different places, and I have a company on the side. We deliver airplanes all over the world.
Right.
And so to islands in the Pacific. And so Jock's character is actually what I get to do. And it's amazing. There's a bar in Orlando called Jock's Hangar Bar.
Yeah, I'm wearing the shirt, yeah.
And my hangar at home looks exactly like that. It's old airplane parts all over the place. So it really is getting to live the character, and that's what's really fun, and getting to share that.
What a treat though to be a pilot and be that pilot of all pilots. It's a joy. It must be a joy.
So yesterday I was talking. We're getting ready to deliver an airplane to Hawaii next month, and the company that's working on the airplane, getting it ready, the guy calls me up and he goes, "Well, where are you?" And I go, "I'm in Comic-Con in London." And he goes, "You're not Jock, are you?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "That's my girlfriend's favorite movie of the whole time." I became a pilot because of that movie. There's a lot of people that say they became a pilot because of that beginning scene. That's really a fun thing to be a part of, other people's experiences.
I was going to ask that. You must have had that a lot when inspiring, especially young kids, because he's a cool character. He's there fishing. He's got Reggie in the plane. It doesn't look like a bad life for Jock, does it?
Well, the other thing is that, I hope you all know that Harrison Ford was just learning how to fly when we did Raiders of the Lost Ark. But he has gone on to become a major general aviation advocate and a promoter for Young Eagles.
Yeah.
And so he's in the promotion of flying, and he loves it as much as Jock did. And so it's really good to have his character go on in real life also to be a real life advocate of flying. So that's a really big plus.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd not considered that, but yeah, of course that makes all the sense. Moving forward a few years, a famous story about yourself in Jurassic Park, the incident with the hurricane and getting folks off the island. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because it kind of started off as an urban legend, and then people realised, oh no, actually, this really happened.
So in 1992, Spielberg's film crew was on the island of Kauai in Hawaii, and they were filming Jurassic Park. And a hurricane called Iniki hit the island, devastated the island, trapped the film crew. They used part of the hurricane in the actual movie. They have films of the storm in the actual movie. So the morning after the hurricane passed Kauai, I was flying part-time for another company teaching the pilots how to fly a DC-3, which is an old, like, post-World War II airplane. So we decided to fly a load of supplies over to Kauai as part of a training flight. So we landed over there. We had a bunch of stuff for Salvation Army, and we landed, and we were the first airplane to land on the island. While we were unloading, there's some lady over at the side of the fence waving her arms going, hey, hey, can you help me? So I walked over there, and she goes, can you help us? We're trapped on the island. And I'm looking at her, and I go, so you're Kathleen Kennedy, aren't you? And she goes, yeah. I go, well, your husband, Frank Marshall, hired me to be Jock in Raiders of the Lost. She goes, Fred? And I go, yeah. She goes, can you help us off the island? I said, well, how many people do you have? She goes, we have 163 people. I go, well, I don't even have these seats. So what about Hawaiian Airlines? She said, well, they won't come in. They don't know what kind of shape the airport's in.
Yeah.
I said, well, let me call them on the radio. So I called our dispatch on the radio, and I said, hey, I'm on the island, runway's clear, I got all the equipment running that I need. I'll come back to Oahu, you set up the DC-8 and the charter, and I'll come back and get the film crew. So I went back to Oahu, flew the DC-3 back, got the DC-8, flew back in. Safeway gave us a whole bunch of water to carry back into the island, and I picked up the film crew. And so this is in the airport for Kauai sits right on top of the river where we filmed Jock's scene. So now I'm really rescuing the film crew. And so as we're going down the runway, I thought it was very necessary to pick up the microphone and go, dun, 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 dun. And these tired people from the film crew are all going, just get us off the island, please. So I flew them back to Los Angeles. I actually went on vacation the next day, and Southwest Airlines called me and offered me a job, and I retired from Hawaiian and went to work for Southwest.
Wow.
And so that was my last flight for Hawaiian, was rescuing the film crew. And so they put that in the book of the making of Raiders, that Jock actually came in and picked up the film crew.
Well, that's a heck of a story. It really is.
Hi, this is Guy Henry, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Enjoy.
I was going to say in real life, that was real life, but in your career, what's the stickiest or trickiest spot you've been in as a pilot that you can recall?
I was delivering an airplane and the guy's check bounced. No, that's not. So we deliver little airplanes all over the world that aren't normally capable of flying long distances, so we put extra fuel tanks in them, and we deliver them all over the world. So there's been times that I've been out there by myself, and I'm not going to make it type things. And there was one night I had my dad was actually delivering an airplane for me in the other direction. My brother was flying overhead on a Hawaiian Airlines flight. He also went to work for Hawaiian. And I'm declaring an emergency, and the air traffic control calls my office number and says, hey, we have a Sorenson out there declaring an emergency. And my mom answered the phone, and she goes, which one? I have 3 of them out there. And they go, well, who is this? And she goes, I'm his mother. And the guy goes, oh, shit. So that went on. I landed in San Francisco with 2 gallons of gas left, but that was probably the closest I've been to going in the water. But
I can't even imagine. I'm worried when my car's on a quarter of a tank. I can't even picture that.
It was the worst part was my poor mom sat there and wondered all night long, which one of us is out there?
You mentioned Jock Lindsey's hangar bar. You visited. What do you make of it? Because Indiana Jones doesn't have a bar. Marion doesn't have a bar. Jock has a bar. What do you make of that?
So, Jock, like I said, Jock's hangar bar looks just like my hangar at home, all the airplane parts and everything. But it's his basis for doing tours, and a big sign on the front that says Jock's Tour, air tours, charters, and stuff like that. But I flew tours in Hawaii. I can still do the tour verbatim from start to finish. So fly around all the islands. So it's exactly what I got to do in my career. And you go down there. One of the head bartender is coming to Las Vegas next week, and she wants to go in the Air Force and become a pilot because she's been around all the aviation stuff in there. So I'm going to take her flying next week when she comes out. So we get to be a part of people's enjoyment of the adventure.
That's fascinating. And finally, before I let you go, because I know you've still got people upstairs, what's going on with you now in terms of career, in terms of work and flying? What's happening now?
So my dream, I fly for the charter company in Vegas. We have 32 jets that we do charter work, kind of like a Uber in the air. But my dream is I have a collection of old airplanes that I work on and help restore. And my dream is to put them into one big hangar and have a place with a simulator for kids to come learn how to fly and to work on the airplanes and get a little bit of history of the old airplanes and where aviation came from, as opposed to these new airplanes that all have computers in them and stuff like that. So really learn about the airplanes and be able to fly the simulator for free and have a library for them to research and stuff. So that's where I would like to go at the end of my career here.
Brilliant. There is a scene in the new film where the kid is the sidekick kid is learning how to fly. They so should have had Jock come back and show him. It would have made all the sense in the world. Well, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you coming down. Have a big hand for Fred, please.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit panthertracks.com and be sure to comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds. Panthertracks, exactly. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@panthertracks.com. Please do. The more questions, the better. We don't always get to them, but we always read them out, so please do send them in. Subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Panther Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember, tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK time, 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch. And check out our Panther Tracks Radio Friday night rotation. It's every Friday at 7 o'clock UK time for new episodes of The Phantom from Down Under, Planet Layer, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks. And every Tuesday at 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks. And that's me done for this episode.
Coming up next on Panther Tracks Radio, it's Start Your Engines.